G'day guys, hope everyone's having a great week. We're here today to talk about what the house prices growth is going to be in your city over the next 3 years. What we've seen in the last few days is QBE have released their 2017 Australian housing outlook, and this gives us a bit of an indication of, when we get people like that crunching all the numbers, how they think the market's going to be going. One of the biggest things about this report, and it's really important to keep in mind, is that QBE, really aren't in the property industry. They're someone who operates on the periphery of the property industry, and typically what we see with those kinds of reports is we see, very conservative projections, very cautious projections. And so that's something that we want to take into consideration as we run through the stats, and you're going to see the eventual growth figures that actually come out of these cities will be considerably more bullish and much higher than what we hear today. But let's talk about specifically what we see today, and I'll also give you my feedback. Here's what the numbers that QBE are projecting. So that the price growth leader over the next 3 years is going to be Canberra. And that's pretty consistent with what we've seen recently. They're certainly in the upswing of their market. They're predicting we're going to see 16% over the next 3 years. Which is certainly in line with certainly what Lewis Christopher is projecting from SQM Research. I'd probably, his projections are a hell of a lot more bullish, and probably being someone that specialises in research analytics in the property industry is someone that I pay a lot more attention to. Hobart 11%, Melbourne 10%, Brisbane and Adelaide both around about 7%. We're going to see Perth at 3%. Sydney with no change over the next 3 years. We're going to talk a bit more about that in a few minutes. And Darwin prices actually declining by 1%. So based on that, pretty much what I think. So, in terms of where all the cities are in their cycles, thanks, Marnie, for the question. I'm just talking really the capital cities, not about the states as a whole. Maybe if you want to check out the report yourself, there might be some more details in there to give you the information that you're after. I think both Canberra and Hobart, we're going to see greater growth than what they're projecting, certainly in line with the 12-month growth figures that we've got coming out of those areas at the moment. Brisbane and Adelaide also, Adelaide and Brisbane both are moving into, very inclining markets. We're seeing probably the most activity and the most interest investing in, particularly in Brisbane. Hence, I think, their projections for Brisbane are very, very understated. Also for Perth, they're only projecting 3%. I think that's probably Perth is the one that I think that they really missed the boat by. Look, obviously where the Perth market has been, I can understand why they'd be more cautious in that area than many of the other states. But it's really clear from the statistics seen throughout REWA, SQM, Residex, RP data, that Perth is already in the recovery phase, and so we would be predicting that Perth is going to see considerably more than the 3% than what QBE is projecting. I think one of the reasons. Let's talk about the other cities before we move on. Melbourne, they've marked at 10%, but you want to keep in mind that that's actually less than what we're seeing in the current 12-month growth prices in those capital cities. Now, I would tend to agree that we're actually going to see start to see a slowing in Melbourne. If we talk about how this compares with the Sydney market, Sydney has certainly been the boom market over the past 3 years, but we've already seen Sydney hit the top of the market and actually start to see some decline in their rises. Hence, this is saying that we won't see any price growth in Sydney over the next 3 years. I probably even think that might be a little conservative, and we might actually see some of those price retraces, which is just standard for the property market. We go through our boom and bust cycles, the markets get overheated, they become overvalued, and then what we see is the corrections in those prices. This is for, I know a lot of our followers in Perth, this is exactly what we've seen in the Perth market over the last 2 years, and I think you're going to see Sydney, because their price growth period prior to their correction was far higher than what Perth was seeing. So I also think we're going to see a decline or a retraction much bigger than what we've seen in Perth over the last couple of years. So Melbourne, Melbourne always follows Sydney as the second city in the market. I think what we're going to see is Sydney or Melbourne start to hit the top of its market, start to slow down, and then we might even see a little bit correction coming out of Melbourne as well. We do have to keep in mind though that Melbourne has got huge population growth underpinning it, and that will probably allow it to have a much softer landing than what we're going to see in Sydney. Look, Darwin retracting 1%. I think that's pretty accurate, probably around about that. One of the reasons that the QBE have used for their cautious and I guess conservative approach is because of the tighter restrictions that we saw APRA place on lenders, not only investors but also interest only. I think one of the things that QBE has failed to take into consideration here is that while we saw quite quick reactions from all the lenders in terms of the restrictions that APRA put in place, I think most of these lenders really overestimated what they needed to do, and we've already been seeing this over the last couple of months. The banks are now starting to get super competitive. Commonwealth Bank, right, removing their $2 ATM fee, obviously the first bank to do that. If you as consumers are looking out there, you're going to notice that there's been significant more advertising. The banks are getting significantly more competitive, and now that they've really made moves to accommodate APRA's restrictions, I actually think we're going to see quite the opposite. I think we're going to see the banks get really, really competitive. We've already seen that, particularly with principal and interest loans. We're already seeing that, particularly with fixed rates. So I think that's one of the things that they probably haven't quite got right, and that's what's actually led to much more conservative, much more cautious approaches. Like I said to you, look, this is an important outlook. We always read the outlook to make sure that we're up to date with what the industry is thinking, and use that information to then guide us and the way that we then guide our clients in terms of where they should be investing. I think it's really important if this is something of interest to you, you want to get out there and check out SQM's research. The paper that they released, Lewis Christopher, I think his projections are probably far more accurate. I'm actually going to be typing up a bit of a blog article and have that out on the website. I'll probably put it up on Facebook in the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for that if you want to recap what we've gone through today and actually look in more detail. Apart from that, guys, that's really all I want to do for you, is just keep you up to date with what's happening out there in the market. Of course, we've got some workshops coming up on I think it's the 14th and 15th of November. So if you haven't seen me live yet, make sure you get along. Click the link. I'll put a link in the post afterwards, so that if you want to get along to those. And if you're someone who's a property investor, one of the things that we do is we really turbocharge and reduce all the inefficiencies that a lot of our clients have in their existing portfolios. So, guys, if you want to make more by doing less, then the Financial Health Check is a really great goal. Get along to a website, register for one of those, and we'll have a look at more specifically how we can actually individually help you. Apart from that, guys, that's all I've got for you today. Love to hear your comments, love to hear your feedback. If there's stuff that you want me to talk about, please post it down in the comments box below. We'd love for you to share this video so that more and more people can get access to it as well. And we look forward to either seeing or speaking with you soon. Have a great day, guys. Catch you later.